Welcome to Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. Decoding the beliefs and strategies of global experts to give you an updated mindset to make the most of modern life. Hosted by the UK's most in-demand and highest paid hypnotherapist, Adam Cox.
This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today, we have the Queen of Resilience, Scarlett O'Connor. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
More than welcome. More than welcome. So the Queen, resilience is one of my favorite resourceful states, just because I feel like people over-egg motivation and discipline, but unless you've got the ability to pick yourself up again, after a failure, after a setback, you can have all the motivation in the world. It doesn't mean that much. Where did this name Queen of Resilience come from? And why do you feel that resilience is such an important resource?
So, well, let's just say I didn't give the name to myself. I actually joined the new app, the social media app that's out and about at the moment, Clubhouse. And I've only recently begun to share a bit of my story through my kind of triumphs and tribulations, I guess. And it was upon sharing a little bit of my why I do what I do now, what I've been through in order to come to where I am now, that people started to call me it on Clubhouse. I got called it a couple of times. And then I thought one day, you know what, that is my story. That is my story. It is resilience from kind of birth to where I am now. And so actually I thought, yeah, I'm going to kind of go with this. It sounds a bit bold and brash to do, but at the same time, it feels, as soon I mentioned it to a couple of friends and said, hey, a few people call me Queen of Resilience. And they were like, that is you. Oh, own that. And so I started to introduce myself as it a little bit recently. And as soon as somebody says, like, well, tell me a little bit, and I do, they go, yes. Okay, Queen of Resilience, you can keep that title. So yeah, well, resilience is so important, isn't it, in life? For anything, because if we get knocked down and we don't get back up again, then we stop going for those goals or those dreams or whatever those things are that we want to do in life, whether that's improving our health, relationships, business, mission in life. If we allow a setback to completely stop us, then it can stop us from living. It can stop us from being the person that we're here to be.
I think it's such a powerful thing, and the movie scene that kind of highlights the importance of resilience for me. I don't know if you saw, it was one of the Rocky movies where he's talking to his son and he's talking about, it's not how hard that you can hit, it's how hard you can be hit and then keep getting back up again. And for me, that just kind of typifies and kind of amplifies this feeling of resilience. What was it that you went through that made you realize how resilient you are?
Well, when you say that quote, that rings pretty true for my story, because my journey, in short, is that I grew up with what I now understand to be a narcissistic mother and mentally ill, an alcoholic father. And so probably two people who should never have had kids and just kind of dragged me around. And that meant by the age of kind of 7, 8, I'd been abused, was completely neglected. And at 12, my mum kicked me out. I went into the care system, had a child at 16, was written off by most people because I've got no family and didn't go to school, had a child at 16. And so a lot of people had kind of written me off, but I became this little go-getter, I guess. That was my son that gave me that purpose. And I'm really proud to say I sit here in my home, nice car, I had lovely holidays, all that great stuff. And so I can say that I achieved all the things that I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to achieve at 16 when I had my baby boy. But as you achieve goals, your vision becomes bigger, reality changes that a little bit more. You get introduced to different people, different circles, different things. I remember when I first went into business and found out what a business was, and HR and marketing and IT, and this was awakening, like all of those steps. And as life expanded, reality changed, I set new goals, went into IT, gained a great career in IT, become a program manager, moved into global project management. And that was really that was really filling my purpose, because it was providing in all the ways that I wanted to provide for. And then in 2015, I was on a girls' holiday in Spain for a 30th holiday. And on the final night that we were there, the police were called because of an incident, and it ended up with the police officer smashing my face off a marble floor and almost killing me. He broke. So when you said the quote of "it's not how hard you can get knocked down," I mean, I got knocked down pretty hard. I had my eyebrow, nose, cheekbone, all the bones in my cheek, scar across my head. Not this one that was previous. There's another scar now on my head. I actually woke up in hospital to my tongue being stitched up after it happened. I had 4 blood transfusions and was very, very lucky to be alive. So that was definitely being, as we would say it, knocked down. And then 2 years later, I lost my dad, who was never really the father figure, but was a poorly old man. And he passed away. And I continued to be as I'd always been, which is running the same patterns and strategies as I'd always ran, which is to get back up and get on with it. And whilst resilience is amazing, there was something that I wasn't very good at. And that was talking. That was saying when I'm not okay, even to myself, because I wouldn't even, I think, ever allow myself. It was that much kind of get up and get on with it. And then my dad passed away. I did what I would normally do, carry on, smile on my face, buried my poor dad, took my son traveling around Cambodia, came back, and I think in 8 days, I had passed out of the wheel of my car due to exhaustion, and I drove my car into a tree at 50 miles an hour. So very lucky to get out, because obviously a tree doesn't move. So driving 50 miles an hour into a tree, I was very, very grateful to get out of that. Cut out into a coma, and I woke up with a severe head injury. And as you can see, probably on the camera, I have this, what looks like a huge Harry Potter scar across my forehead. And so that was, again, being knocked down, I guess. Went through a dark patch, as we do, like when we get knocked back. After that, questioned my existence, questioned life, questioned people, questioned everything, really. But sometimes we've got to go down before we come back up. And that was my going down. And I realized when I was coming back up that I wasn't really happy. Like inside, there were things I was really happy about, but there were things I really wasn't that happy about. One of them was that I always wanted to help people. I studied to become a counsellor when I was 12 at night college, but couldn't continue because of the voluntary hours you needed to do. And I had a son, full-time job, and couldn't find the hours. And so it came back to that. Like, I want to be in a career where I help people. But at that time, I couldn't. Well, first I needed to prove to myself that I could help myself and get myself out of the dark place I was in with these staples across my head. I'd had a fringe cut in at the time to hide it, and prove to myself that I had the tools to be able to get out of it. And I knew that I had, because I've picked myself up multiple times in my life and continued to strive forward and achieve things. So that was what I did. I set myself a new goal. I decided to enter a local competition, a bikini bodybuilding competition, not really realizing what I'm entering, but deciding that I need to go on a self-love journey. I need to do something just for me. And I've worked years to get my body in shape after having a baby. So decided I'm going to go do this. Fit mum category it was. And I ended up enjoying the whole process, the prep, all of it so much that I decided that I'd set myself the goal to go from coma to Miss Atlas. And Miss Atlas was a show in the States that if you won in the UK, they would take you out to the States to compete. And so everyone thought it was a bit nuts, because I've never done this before. It's a whole new world to me. But I believe that I had the tools and mindset to be able to get me where I want to get. It might not happen when I expect, which it didn't. The first couple of competitions I entered that year, I came second and I missed out. But I went back the next year, and in 18 months, I was taken out to America. And I'm really proud to say that I won whilst out in America and became Miss Atlas. So that was me really filling my cup up, proving to myself that I have the tools and the knowledge to be able to, the mindset to be able to overcome things, and to come back stronger. And it was during that process that I actually discovered NLP.
I think NLP is really important to kind of introduce it within the context that you've experienced there, because one of those core presuppositions is that there's no failure, just feedback, you know, and coming second, you know, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily judge that as kind of like, oh, not there yet, need to refine it, need to improve on certain areas. You know, they could say, oh, I failed, I'm not cut out for this. But the meaning that you gave to it kept fueling your goal. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I think you see that in a lot of athletes across the board, business owners, anybody in most cases that has succeeded at what they've wanted to has experienced a setback or a failure on the way, and has continued to recognize that it's not actually a failure, it's a lesson, it's part of the journey. There's something else maybe you need to know, or that isn't the right way, or there's a better way to be doing things. So I think that as well, not seeing it as a failure as such. I wouldn't think that I see, like when I come second, as a failure. I was really, really proud of what I had achieved.
Totally.
And
because you'd gone from, you know, some people are really into fitness their whole lives, but it sounded to me like this was an idea that popped into your head, and it's just kind of like, maybe I'll give this a go. And then that kind of explored this whole new, you know, kind of area.
I mean, that's only because at 21, I started keeping fit. So I was really, really unfit as a kid, didn't go to school. Obviously, I had a child at 16. Fitness was never in my vocabulary. It was like another language. And then I started working at a business, actually. A guy who I now class as a very dear friend to me, was about 20 plus years older than me, played football at lunchtime, ran after work, just was so very fit, entering 10Ks and all this different stuff. And there was me who was drinking on the weekends. I didn't have my son and not worrying about fitness at all. And he gave me some grief a few times. And in the end, I went, you know what? I'll bring my trainers in. I'll run around the block. And I tried to run around the block, and it was the most awful experience, because within a few feet, near enough, I was purple and completely out of breath and panting, and realized that I was very, 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 very unhealthy. So I think that pain then was what caused me at that point to go, okay, I need to do something about this. This is not okay. And that's what got me into keeping fit. So although it would seem that after my accident, I turned around and went, oh my goodness, I'm going to do this, that's only because I had trained for over 10 years in a gym.
So you
or
had,
at least the last 5.
the foundation.
I had the foundation. For the last 10 years, at least the last 5 I've been in a gym, but the last 10 years, I pretty much woken up every morning and exercised before work. So, and lifting weights, I'd probably done for the last 5 years. So it wasn't that I didn't have any muscle. It wasn't that I'd never lifted weights. I already loved all of that part of it. The only thing that had never been in my mind was competing until my accident.
That is. So that was the catalyst to set a big new goal and send you on that adventure. And what were the key barriers, either physical or psychological, that kind of got in your way? Because, you know, anything outside of a comfort zone isn't easy to achieve. What challenges did you face?
What challenges did I face? I think like we all do, like those voices in our heads, maybe saying like, who do you think you are? Or yeah, but then just having to quiet any of those noises. Just I say just, it's not just, is it? But yeah, recognizing what those voices are, like almost just acknowledging them to go, oh, like, and I think I tend to do that a lot with things. Like if I notice the voice, it's just acknowledging that it's there, and it's okay, because that's probably a normal voice to have and fears to have. But for me, NLP became very imperative for my journey. The everything combined, what happened, the bodybuilding, wanting to be on a self-love journey, discovering NLP, because anything I've ever achieved in my life, it's been through visioning.
Nice.
It's been through getting that clear picture of what it is I want to achieve.
And I can imagine, you know, competing for, let's say, a Miss Atlas competition. That's a relatively simple thing to visualize, you being on stage, competing and winning. How did you do that for NLP? Because it's fairly intangible and conceptual as an idea. What did that vision look like when you thought of, you know, succeeding in that area?
So it helped me because I think, like, we've all got our thoughts going on in our head, and we can all beat ourselves up. We can all tell ourselves we can or can't do something. And so there's no harm in allowing yourself to actually really vision what that looks like. When I came across NLP and started to understand neurolinguistics programming, there was lots I never knew, and then there was lots that just made complete sense to how I worked as a person, to how I'd achieved the things I had. And one of those was the visioning. But what became clearer is that why it was so important to actually vision yourself there, feeling it, seeing it, hearing it, actually really stepping into that moment. So not just a picture on a board or a picture far away, or me thinking, I'm winning it, but really standing in it. So every morning I'd get up, I'd go to the gym, and then I'd practice posing afterwards. And in my own head, no one has any idea what I'm picturing, but in my own head, I was on the stage every time, and I was winning, and I was inside celebrating that win and imagining it happening. And that doesn't mean that I thought it would actually happen. I just knew that if I'm going to achieve it, whenever it happens, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, whenever it happens, this is the way it will happen. It won't happen with me not doing these things. It will happen because I've done these things. If anything, this is going to help me, but it doesn't mean I will win. So I didn't, even though I visioned it for a long time, I didn't think I would win. It was still very much a surprise when I won.
Yeah, fantastic. Because I mean, there's different schools of thought when it comes to like the visualization, and it sounds like you've made that absolute distinction between disassociation, seeing yourself as someone else, and then stepping into that body and actually experiencing the emotion.
Yeah.
Some people would call that mental rehearsal. Some people would call it law of attraction, and you're manifesting that by experiencing something in advance. Do you believe that that was an element of that you were at a quantum level attracting that result to you? Or do you think it's just a case that if you attach an emotion to something that is really appealing to you, that's going to unlock the resources to then actually do the training and actually kind of
exactly
do
that
what's necessary to
exactly
win?
that yeah exactly what you've just said. I'm not really one for manifestation, and I believe that if you vision something and get very clear, as you said, you've got that emotion attached to it, then those tasks that you've got to do in order to get there it's not that they're not hard, but you haven't got to have that so much of a mental battle, because you're very clear on that. You've got that emotion attached, you know your why of why you're doing it. And my why was that I couldn't go on and help other people until I'd help myself. So my why was bigger than me anyway, because it was that I was doing it for me because I knew I needed to do it for me. But I needed to do it for me in order so that I could help other people. So my why was bigger than me as well, which I think no doubt helped me, but not necessarily to win, but just helped me to even be there that day, whether I won or I didn't win. Because, oh my goodness, I think I was in a category of 28 other women. So 27 women didn't win that day, but they put in all of the effort and worked maybe harder. I have no idea than I did, and they didn't win that day. So I don't believe in so I don't believe manifestation. I think manifestation, law of attraction, happens because you're clear on your goal and your vision in it, you're taking the action, and therefore if opportunities arise, they only arise because you cross paths with people or times and you've taken the action to be in that situation.
I agree with you. I think there's such a huge element of cause and effect there, and a thought is a cause that has a link to an effect. But the idea that you can simply vibrate at a particular frequency to magically attract victories and Ferraris and things, I think is, because if that was the case, NASA would have a team of not just scientists and, aeronautical engineers. They'd have a team of law of attraction experts in the corner just vibrating to make sure people get to Mars. For me, there is a question mark over, some of the pseudoscience around it. But equally, we are human beings, and we have the ability to imagine the future. And I think when you imagine the future being, very unpleasant or detrimental, most people have had the experience of feeling anxiety for an event that hasn't happened yet. So if you can attract undesirable emotions to future thoughts, you can definitely have the definition of excitement, isn't it? All the kids know that when they think about Christmas, even when it hasn't happened yet, it feels good, it feels fun. That at some level takes them in the direction that they want to go to. In terms of when you're now working with clients, how important is it that you've got references in your own life of being knocked down and getting back up again in order to feel congruent, and that you're not the imposter, you're well placed to help someone else? Is that something that you reflect on a lot, or do you disassociate the two and just say, well, look, my experience is my experience, this is all about the client, and I'm just going to do the best I can for them?
Yeah, so my own story has not really come up. I actually didn't even share any of my journey until what happened with George Floyd last year. And I don't actually watch the news, but the news just, it was, the TV was on downstairs, and I happened to walk past it, saw what had happened, and I actually just began to break in tears. It really upset me. I realized what was going on, just brought things back for myself. And that was when I took a couple of weeks away from everything, poured a bit into myself, and then came back and went, you know what? I've worked with people for 15 plus years. No one has any idea of the things that I've been through. Not that it matters, but at a time when there's so much anger and pain being felt by everywhere, I felt like it was right to share what I've been through, why I do what I do now, and to help inspire people to see as well that, like, the past does not equal the future, that allowing the bad things that happen to us to carrying that bad stuff with us only impacts us and our mental health and the others people around us. And mental health is key to me. Like I said, my dad was mentally ill, and didn't have kind of anxiety, depression. He was suffered with mental illness and was men in white coats kind of locked up, sectioned every year. So mental health is key to my heart. I know that my dad wasn't born mentally ill. He came into the world just like anybody else, a beating heart who knew nothing and was shaped by the world. And he had a horrible dad, and his dad actually made him mentally ill through the words he used. And so I realized from quite a young age that mental health is something we need to protect. And that's become more apparent as I've got older. And after being everything I have, I recognize that a lot of people suffer because of the things that they've been through. And actually, by understanding how they can let go of what's happened, how they can reframe, reflect, change the way that their mind works, so that they're not seeing life, their reality, the way that they are, but actually can see it from maybe a different place, can have profound effects on the way somebody feels emotionally, the weight they carry around. And so that was what drove me to share my story. And now, for instance, like on Clubhouse, and I'm beginning to, on a bit of my social media, say a little bit about, maybe, I don't know, when this happened to me, so that people can understand how I can relate to them. But I wouldn't say past that point I ever work with a client and say, oh, well, like this happened to me, and therefore everything I do with a client is to help uncover them so that they can become the best version of them. And their story is completely different from my story. So
of course. And I think it's an important thing that, whenever you've gone through difficulties, that becomes almost, I think there's two ways of looking at it. You can say, that victim mentality, all these things happen to me and the world is a bad place, or you can say, right, all these bad things have happened and I've come through every single one of them. And I think, one makes you a champion and one makes you kind of a victim. And there's very little difference between the two, except that you focus on what happens afterwards when you think, I got through that kind of stuff. And that is, I think, a crucial part of what makes resilient people resilient, is they remember all the times they have got through very challenging times. Of all the things that you've gone through, what is your go-to memory to kind of give you evidence that you are the queen of resilience?
Oh, wow. I'd say my new memory has definitely been on stage. And I actually think that's probably because I imprinted it so bloody much with practicing that moment, that has definitely stood there. And before that, my moment was my little boy, was having my little boy. That was always my proudest. Are you a parent?
I am a parent, yeah.
Yeah. There's those few seconds when you first have a baby, which are just the most, like, it's all incredible. Those few seconds when you recognize that little baby is what you've made. Wow. I can't explain it to anybody, but it was the most.
You can't go back to being the person you were before. That's
No.
the thing. There is a line in the sand and you are a fundamentally different person, because
As a human being.
yeah, there's one thing talking about responsibility, but there's another thing knowing that responsibility, which is why I guess for you, it must have been difficult when you became a parent to relate to how your parents were with you, because of that feeling you had. And clearly at some level that wasn't the same kind of a feeling or responsibility they took.
No, and what's actually really became apparent whilst I was on my journey to becoming Miss Atlas and learning NLP, was that I was carrying around a lot of anger. I wasn't aware of that. Even as I started to go on that journey to learning tools to be able to help other people, and I had no idea that I was carrying around this anger myself. Until I started to really work on myself with my coach and my tutor as well. And that was when I learned then a lot about, I did a lot. I went on a big inner journey. I think after being attacked or assaulted, I really went on a journey to understand human behavior. Like, why was my mum the way she was? Why was he the way he was? Why even was my dad the way he was? Why? And then more importantly, why am I who I am? And I came across the fact that you don't really have an anger problem as an adult unless you've had things that you morally disagreed with happen when you were a child. And because you were a child and you didn't have a voice and your emotional needs probably weren't met, you carry the anger with you. And I came across all this stuff, and then obviously this happened. And then I learned about NLP, and it all began to make a lot of sense. I was carrying all this emotion around with me. I was carrying this anger and sadness and guilt, shame, and everything else. But I wasn't aware that it was there. And so I'm very grateful that I went on the journey to help other people and learn those tools, because it was during that journey I realized quite how much I was limited by myself, that yeah, I had, and being able to let go of all of that. That was what really made me then decide, this is what I need to be doing for people.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing, because once you figure out that you can change yourself, there is that calling, isn't there, to kind of feel like, because you do see a lot of people in the world that don't necessarily know the things that you've learned, and they're still struggling, and you're through that kind of dark place and they're still in the dark place. And I feel that's a very positive, powerful thing to do, to kind of show other people out of the maze, if that makes sense, lead them out of the prison.
I started joining like forums and different things. Never really done that, on like narcissistic mother and toxic childhood, and there were so many people who are out there just the same as me, just so confused by what's really happening, feeling like they're not lovable, still they're not loved. And very confused, because we grow up looking at 2.4 children on TV, and I mean, even holiday adverts and everything's all about, and Christmas and everything else like that. I always find a difficult time, Christmas, because it's one day that everybody becomes this family unit for the day, isn't it?
Mm.
And I thought that I was alone my whole life. And then going on these forums, I realized, well, one, I'm not alone, and two, this is a problem. That I couldn't find the answers during when I was on these forums, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. Great awareness to become aware of it. That in itself was an awakening, and to realize I'm not alone, and that it's quite normal to feel this way, or have these reactions, and have these thoughts and beliefs. And so that was what really sent me on the journey to, I need to find the answers for myself and for others, because I'm actually not, we all think it's only us in our heads, don't we, a lot? We think.
It is very easy to think no one else in the world can relate to what I'm going through right now, and it's just me. And of course, that's very unrealistic with 7 billion people in the world. You're the only one that's had that kind of experience. But yeah, when you look for answers, you find them. For me, it was, I had such severe social anxiety as a teenager. I was a recluse for almost a year, and yeah, again, I had to figure that out for myself as to kind of how to get through that. But once you do it, then actually it becomes a suit of armor, because then you think, well, if you can get out of a really, really dark place at the edge of an abyss, what else can you get out of? And it kind of makes you feel a bit bulletproof, which is a good feeling. How would you encourage someone that maybe feels that they're lacking resilience? And I guess in two key ways. One, life is going to knock you down. So what tips would you offer to help people get back on their feet? And what about those people that are scared now to try something new because of previous failures or setbacks in the past? What would be your advice to them?
So I think if you're feeling like you haven't got any resilience, you definitely have. Remind yourself of a time when you have got through it, when you have pulled yourself up. Because I think when you're in it and you're going through it, it feels like you haven't. Like, I might have done this continuously, but there's been times when I haven't felt like I could. And it's been reminding myself of what I've been through before that reminds me of how strong I actually am. And so I tell anybody, you've all got a story. You've all got your own life experience. You've all been knocked down in one way or another, and you have got back up. And you might be struggling to find that time when you're not thinking about it. But if you ask yourself the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And so just by asking yourself, like, when have I been through a time that I've got over? When have I felt really confident and strong? When have I felt really powerful? Take yourself back to that and let those memories, like as you mentioned earlier, Adam, like you can remind yourself of anything and bring back those emotions at any point. So put your shoulders back, put that chest up, stand in a strong position and remind yourself of what you've done before, and get ready to go take on the world, and whatever that next thing is that you're going to come back from stronger than you were before, because that's what happens. We get knocked down, but we get to learn from that, which makes us come back stronger.
I agree. And I think for me, a really useful way of defining failure is that failure isn't trying something and then not getting the result you want. Failure is giving up. And I think that's the only way you can truly fail, is if you just, do what I did when I was 19, become a recluse and don't attempt anything. That's true definition of failure, because life slips away at that point. As long as you're still in the game, you haven't lost. But
it didn't, because you came back, so it didn't. So it was just a pause.
Yeah, well, reframing it now, that's the best thing. I was asked in a podcast about a year ago, if I could go back to any moment in time, which day would I relive? And I think the host was expecting me to say, the birth of my children, or, a day when I was really successful in business or something like that. And I said, I want to go back to that day, me at my darkest, just to remind myself that I got through that. And also, if I spend a day in that really dark place, every day compared to that is sunshine and rainbows. So sometimes, we can't necessarily avoid the fact that, tough things have happened, but that makes us tougher. That makes us stronger. The fact that we did get through that. And I think that's what resilience is all about.
Yeah. And I think that don't know whether I can swear or not, shit happens in life, doesn't it? Like, you can sit and worry about everything that's going to happen. The likelihood is none of those things are going to happen, and something you're completely not expecting to happen is going to happen. Or you can actually almost run into fear where you think that's going to happen so much that that's where your focus is, and next minute it's happening anyway because that's all you've been allowing yourself to focus on. So I think, like, for me, what's really important as well, and what definitely helps me move on, is recognizing, what am I up, like, if I'm upset, or if I'm feeling a certain way, why am I feeling like this?
Mm.
And is it because of somebody else? Because if it is, then what I probably need to do is take back that power and give myself some love. Because if I'm going to allow myself to be in a rut because of other people, well, then I'm not going to get very far in life at all.
Mm.
And that isn't going to affect anybody else that's affected me. And that's the truth of it. So I could be really upset, is probably not the word, but I victim to the fact of my parents, the fact that my dad did love me, but he was very ill, and my mum is incapable of loving me. Well, I could say, well, I've got no family, I've got no parents, right? That therefore means I can't have, I don't know, a good career, or I can't have X, Y, and Z, or I can't. But that wouldn't change. That would only hold me back if I said, well, I can't be these things because of somebody else. Or so I think, first of all, at any point in your life, like when you get knocked back, because like relationships and finances are the worst. We know that for people. So when relationships end or money's a problem, that's when the most stress is like caused. So recognizing, like, especially in relationships, like, am I upset because of them? And if I am, how can I take the power back? Because if I'm going to sit and be sad because of the actions of somebody else and moan about them, well, then I'm going to be completely disempowered and never get anywhere. So first thing is responsibility, basically, isn't it? I think that's probably the key word I'm looking for, which I couldn't find.
It is. It's taking ownership of it, because
Taking ownership, regardless of how hard that is, which is hard sometimes. But
it's so hard to do. But I think it is a cultural, particularly in Britain, we love to moan. We love to kind of, there's always a reason why, someone's in a bad place, the economy, the government, parents, childhood, all this kind of stuff. But that just traps people. That's like living in quicksand. And the hard thing to do, and it is hard, is to say, right, despite all that stuff, what can I do to turn this around? What can I do to improve things? And it's easier said than done, but that's the only way out, really, to kind of have that personal responsibility.
And it is, when we're talking about it, it's that's the case. That is what you've got to do. That doesn't mean it's easy. That's not at all saying that any of it's easy. It's not, but life's not easy. Like, life throws whatever it throws at us, and we've got all these things we've got to learn. Like, that's what we've got to remember. We came into the world a baby and had to learn to walk. We couldn't even walk. Couldn't even crawl. Like, look at a baby trying to crawl. It's you can't actually even crawl.
Yeah, that's it. But if a child gave up, the first time it tried to walk and fell down a few times, it would be walking now. So resilience. If resilience is in toddlers, it's in all of us. Let's be honest.
It's in all of us.
But we forget sometimes. So if we look metaphorically as your life as a book, you've had a few chapters. Some of those chapters have been quite tough, but you've got through it. What's the upcoming chapters for you? What's the future look like?
Oh, well, hopefully a lot calmer. And I would like to think that the next few chapters are all about others, all about paying it back, and other people's success. That's what I want my chapters to be about, is that other people's success. Like I said, my personal goal was to go from coma to Miss Atlas, so I go on out to help other people. I am now still competing because I won that competition and got invited back. And because of COVID, we didn't go. So at the end of this year, I'm in Texas competing again. So still doing that for me as well. But that was the goal. Do that, and I can really go on to help other people. And that's what's lights my soul, letting people let go of their baggage, untangle themselves. Like, we don't get, like we get taught good stuff, I guess, in school. Like I said, I didn't have the best upbringing anyway. But we don't get taught how we really work. And like my son's 17, and at 12, he was getting taught how to program a computer. And he left school and hasn't learned how to program his mind or reprogram his mind. And so I think being able to be part of this generation of learning and educating and sharing and watching other people succeed, providing them the tools so that they can achieve their goals and become limitless is, yeah, I think that's the idea. So I'm one-to-one coaching currently. That's what I've been doing since about 2018. I'm moving more into offering group coaching as well to help more people at once, and I'm going to be launching events as well this year. So something you might even want to be involved in with, Adam.
I'm these events every other month. I love, this is the thing I've loved about the pandemic is that, I love speaking in front of crowds, but these summits and kind of have been brilliant because you just get to impact so many more people in a really efficient way. It's such a powerful thing. If someone's inspired by your story, what you've done to become more and more resilient, maybe they want to work with you for a one-to-one coaching, what's the best way they can reach out?
So probably the best way is my website, which is scarlettoconnor.co.uk. So that's, I'll spell it just in case for people, which is ScarlettOconnor.co.uk. And then I'm Scarlett O'Connor everywhere else as well. You'll find me on Instagram, on Facebook, and anywhere else. But you can book a call straight through there or check out what services or events that we're planning, etc. So yeah, that would be probably the best way to reach me.
Scarlett, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Adam. It's all new to me jumping on kind of podcasts and this sort of thing. And after a whole year of lots of isolation, it's really lovely actually to be here with you.
You've been a great guest and it's a really fascinating story and I'm excited for your future. And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again soon.
Thank you for listening to Modern Mindset with Adam Cox. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review. Modern Mindset, picking the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours.